Hi, this is János, it's Real World Audio, and today I'm talking about the Cube Audio Fc8 driver in my Voigt Pipe cabinet. And I've received a lot of questions about how does it compare to my Voice of Lancelot loudspeaker. And I will answer that question, but before that, I will answer a much more practical question, and that is how the Cube Audio speaker, the Cube Audio driver in my speaker, because it's not a Cube Audio cabinet, but from what I read of the reviews and what you can read or listen to in my previous videos, that what I experienced with them is fairly consistent with the level of experience you can get from a Cube Audio driver in a Cube Audio loudspeaker or a different cabinet of your design or a design of a competent loudspeaker designer. So basically for that, this is step one, and I'm going to answer how does it fare when we compare apples to apples. And the second apple in my comparison will be the Mirage 760. And Mirage, that's a Canadian company, and the 760 is that's a loudspeaker that was made like 20 years ago, maybe 25. And now we can consider it by all means as a vintage loudspeaker. And those who have heard it then and now, they know that if you happen to get across one, then it's an extremely good find. And people say that even comparing to today's floor standards, because that's a floor standard big speaker. I have featured it on my channel many times because I have a pair, and that's always like a generic observation that it compares extremely well against current floor standard modern multi-way loudspeakers. And how well my buddy Irvin, he has said when he listened to them that they perform as well as today you would expect from a multi-way loudspeaker in the $10,000 category. I have to say a disclaimer though that my pair has I rebuilt the crossover and I redid the internal wiring, so I spiced it up quite a bit. So when you have an unmodified Mirage 760, you may have a quite different experience. And it won't be a disappointing experience, but if you have original crossover capacitors in it that are 25 years old, it will sound like absolute dismal crap. You really need to change those, to update them to current parts, because those old capacitors, their life is gone long time. And that's true for any loudspeaker that you buy that are like vintage speakers of 20 years or older. Guys, when you compare it to modern loudspeaker, like of a similar size, similar category, maybe even same loudspeaker, just a current model that's produced today, and the current one sounds like amazing, or one sounds like shit, and then you upgrade the capacitors and they're the same level. They have a different personality, like kind of like saying cha 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 or salsa, but they are in the same ballpark. And more often than not, the vintage speaker has a more balanced sound and you can enjoy music much better on it. And the modern one, it just gives you a bigger show but no substance. And that's true for a lot that we can find. So first of all, if you find a vintage loudspeaker, you must make sure that the capacitors in the crossover are not worn out. If there's like capacitors like 10 plus years, 15, 20 years, they are expired by now. You must change them. If you just review them or listen to them without that, you are committing a grave mistake. It's like driving a car that hasn't had oil filter and oil changed in it in 20 years. Now what will that be? You will just burn down the engine. That's what happens in a real car. And in a loudspeaker analogy, you might blow your crossover if that capacitor decides to fail on you, and then it will take your amp with it to the grave, or it will just sound like a dead engine in a car, which is like nothing. So when I hooked up my Mirage a couple years ago and tested it, it sounded absolute dismal, abysmal crap. Yeah, that's it. And it had like the sensitivity of a dead cow, no highs, no lows, and it wasn't even Bose. So and then I upgraded the crossover because I thought, well, I upgrade the crossover, but as I wasn't expecting anything because it sounded so terrible that okay, those guys who say nice thing about it, they either are really off the mark, or just the capacitors are in a really sorry state in it. And what happened is that the capacitors were in a sorry state, and after just a few hours of breaking in the new parts, it started opening up. It's like the sensitivity, the efficiency, like it's kind of like almost like plus 20 dB efficient compared to the old parts. So this is a warning, general warning for all of you, that when you use your old vintage loudspeakers, or even if it's not that old, but you feel that you have to crank the volume up and you are still not getting volume out of it, then yeah, your capacitors need changing. That's number one indicator sign. So if it's muddy, it's no transparency to it, no highs, no lows, you have to crank the volume up to hear anything, then that's it. It means that the capacitors are leaking like crazy, and they're just soaking up all the energy that the amplifier is tossing at it, and it's not transmitting the energy to the drivers. So the drivers are starved basically because the crossover is leaching all the energy. And if you keep pushing with your amplifier, you throw more energy at it to play louder, that's when the caps will fail on you and take your amplifier to the grave in the attempt. So basically, with the modified Mirage, it sounds like a full-blooded modern loudspeaker, and yet comparing it to the Fc8, what is my experience? So first, what are we comparing it against? So let me just draw on my magic board. So here we have one Voigt Pipe cabinet with the cube audio driver, so the Fc8, so that's Voigt Pipe cabinet. It's a tall cabinet, and there's a single driver in it, an 8-inch single driver with a single visor cone. So that's it. And then we have the Mirage. In comparison, it's like this. It's like that. It's a really hefty, bulky loudspeaker, about 80 liters free air volume inside, but it looks, it's really big floor stander, and it has two 8-inch woofers and a soft dome tweeter. So it is like, so here we have one 8 full ranger, and here have two 8-inch woofers, and we have a tweeter. And the specifications on the Mirage say 30 Hz to 20 kHz plus minus 3 dB. So 30 Hz, that's really low, to 20 kHz, it's really high, plus minus 3 dB within that whole range. So that's pretty darn good. And even for today's standards, that's a really nice range for a floor standard multi-way speaker to cover. And that's kind of like the gold standard for this type of technology when you have like an 8-inch woofer or two in a big floor standard cabinet. And that's what it's kind of like a very good performance from a traditional multi-way speaker with crossovers with dedicated narrower bandwidth drivers. So listening the two side by side, what was my experience? Number one, bass response. The cube audio in the Voigt Pipe goes so much deeper than the Mirage. It's mind-blowing. Okay, so here I can experience full-blown 25 hertz from the cube audio. From the Mirage, it doesn't go that low. So the difference between them is that with the cube audio driver in my Voigt Pipe cabinet, I feel that it energizes the room. You have that feeling when it's almost like your body is getting charged up with electricity. And the bass is kind of like penetrating your spine and in your bones. And that's the feel that really, I think people who love bass, they want to get that feeling that the energy enters their body. And that's the feel that you get when the system is capable to reproduce 25 hertz down to 25 hertz, and not just reproduce it, but reproduce it with harmonic and timing integrity and correctness. Because the 25 hertz note and the 50 hertz upper harmonic, 100 hertz upper harmonic, 200 hertz upper, 400, and so on. So the entire harmonic scale that's built on that fundamental, when everything is aligned, the loudspeaker has the capacity to reproduce all of those aligned, that's when you get the ultimate bass experience. And that's where the Fc8 just excels, just astonishingly well. And I do not have any frequency measurements on the low extension, but I can feel between the subjective comparison of the two is that there's absolutely zero question. The cube audio goes so much deeper, so much more alive, so much more detail in the bass, so much better energy. It just, the whole room is energized. And the Mirage, it can just do bass in the part of the room. It doesn't feel as big, not nearly as big as the Mirage. And we're talking about a single driver. What about the high frequency? In the high frequency, the Mirage, which is plus minus 3 dB at 20 kilohertz, feels super limited compared to the Cube Audio's high frequency. The Cube Audio, it seems that it goes just almost like, I feel like an extra octave in the high frequency response compared to the Mirage. And it's not just it goes really high. So for example, with the Mirage, I cannot hear anything in the ultrasonic region. And why do you think would one hear it in the ultrasonic? I have an ultrasonic record cleaner, so I spent a lot of time hearing that, and I can hear bats, and I do a lot of experimentation in that regard. So that's why I'm a little bit going into this ultrasonic bit. That where actually I found out my ears are pretty sensitive to that energy region, and I can tell that 20 plus kilohertz, there's nothing going on with the Mirage, and even the 17 plus kilohertz region is not as clear and not as defined. It's there, but it doesn't have that precision, it doesn't have the punch, the energy, the drive in it that the Cube Audio Fc8 has. It has that sort of astonishing energy and precision in the 17 plus kilohertz region that I have heard only and exclusively from the best compression drivers. Standalone dome tweeters, they can extend really, really high. And what the paper's measurements tell you are correct. Yes, the thing, like a beryllium tweeter, can reach like 30 kilohertz, 25 kilohertz, no problem. But it doesn't have that precision, that energy range, that dynamic range, that capacity that a compression driver has. So in the frequency extension aspect, the single driver cube audio just absolutely, completely demolishes a floorstander speaker, which is a quite large format floorstander with two 8-inch woofers and a dedicated tweeter. I think that just says it all. It tells us miles about what we hold about drivers, what they can do, what they cannot do. That there's a fine specimen that is the Mirage, that is regarded by experienced audiophiles who happen to come across them and hear one with properly upgraded crossover. All over the board, the experience is that that's the keeper. This is the speaker that people want to have, but they don't know about it. So no one is looking for it. But there's like some obscure references to it, and people who find them like, oh my God. And like recently, I had that experience. Someone posted for me like, because I have a video on how to upgrade the crossover, and he just posted, oh, I have one, does anyone want it, it's up for sale. And then he removed his post because he realized that, oh shit, this is a keeper, this is a fine. I just got super lucky to come across it, and just better like redo it and upgrade it and then keep it for myself. And then I'm out of the game of looking for loudspeakers, because it is a loudspeaker for life. In all its respect, it has a fantastic musicality, despite being a MDF cabinet and a dead cabinet, and despite all of that, this is a musical cabinet. So it's kind of an oxymoron. And it has fantastic mid-range as well. So even though it has a crossover in it, its mid-range is gorgeous. So especially male vocals, it excels on male vocals. Even among single driver speakers, it's hard to find specimens that render male vocals as well as the Mirage. It can even render violins beautifully. So I'm not talking about like something just for show only, but something that is a uniquely balanced loudspeaker, which by the way has a beautiful wide frequency range, and it's being demolished in the frequency range respect by the Cube Audio in every possible means. What else? Neutrality. I think neutrality wise, both of them have similar uncolored frequency range. The difference is that there is a little bit of boxiness to the sound for the Mirage that we don't have for the Cube Audio Voigt Pipe. So again, the single driver beats the multi-driver in a category where it's supposed to be weaker, or at least most single driver speakers are relatively colored to an extremely well built multi-way speaker. But in this case, no, it's still better in that aspect. And now there's a third aspect where single drivers fail beyond multi-driver speakers is loudness. So when you crank up the volume, then the single driver starts distorting and can't keep up. No, it's the opposite. So here in this case, the Fc8 can really keep up with turning up the volume, and the bass, the presence, just the atmosphere gets like dialed to 11. And with the Mirage, you start to hear the chuffing of the port. Nelly noticed on that. I can hear the speaker farting, and you can hear the boxiness more while there's no hint for boxiness for the Voigt Pipe based cube audio. So I think that's the gist of my comparison of apples versus apples, so that you get what can you expect that you can relate to your own experience that you have experienced with it's about a meter tall. I think it's a little bit more than a meter tall, the Mirage 760. So like a meter tall, well-built, hefty floorstander speaker, what it can give you in bass response, in high frequency response, in neutrality, in volume handling. If you have a really good specimen of that kind of technology, then how does that relate to the Fc8 experience? And in my experience, the Cube Audio Fc8 in the Voigt Pipe cabinet just destroys the traditional multi-driver floor speaker in every aspect possible. I haven't mentioned dynamic range and sensitivity or efficiency, and in that respect, Cube Audio gets the advantage as well. It's not much more efficient because the Mirage is pretty efficient. It's 89 dB efficient, and it's a 6 ohm load, so that's pretty amplifier friendly, tube amp friendly, and not just tube, solid state amp friendly as well. People forget that amp friendliness in the impedance scale also relates to solid state amplifiers, because even solid state amplifiers will reward you if you connect a loudspeaker that does not guzzle current by the bucket. So if it doesn't have an impedance dip, and the Mirage doesn't dip below, I think 5 ohms, 4.9, 4.8, something like that. So it's really benign. It's well above 4 ohms at all points. So if you hook it up to a 4 ohm terminal on your amplifier, or 6 ohm if you have tube amps and you have these terminals, impedances, these taps, then hook it up there, and it will drive them beautifully, and will be even happier to be driven than several single driver speakers. It, even though it has a crossover in it, its crossover is so benign that when you use high quality parts in this crossover, then it can really whip the butt of a number of single driver speakers. However, it doesn't whip the butt of the Fc8. It's quite the opposite. So now it's 23 minutes. I will have problems uploading it because it's getting way too long, and YouTube hates these super long uploads. I really next time just need to just pause at 10 minutes maybe. So anyway, I hope this comparison was really helpful, and really helps you to pick your path, where you want to go, what you want to plan. And please like, subscribe. Have a fantastic day. Bye bye.